Welcome to Biztech's CEO Conversation Show, the show where we engage industry leaders to share insights into how they run and grow their organizations. Now, today our conversation is with Dzuleira Abu Bakar, the CEO of the Malaysian Research Accelerator for Technology and Innovation, MRANTI. Now, welcome to the show, Zu.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me on the show.
Now, Zu, there's been a buzz about the consolidation of MaGIC and TPM. So what's the new mandate for MRANTI and what does it stand for?
Okay, so MRANTI, as you rightly mentioned, stands for the Malaysian Research Accelerator for Tech and Innovation, which came about through the consolidation of two key agencies within the Malaysian ecosystem. So the two agencies that I've mentioned is that I'm going to mention is MaGIC, which is the Malaysian Global Innovation and Creativity Center. We love our acronyms here in Malaysia. MaGIC, and we also have another agency called the Technology Park Malaysia. So Technology Park Malaysia is basically the science and tech park of Malaysia with physical infrastructure as well as land space in KL. Yeah, we're based out of KL itself. So the merger essentially was to bring out the best of both worlds in that sense. I think it also came about from the whole idea of having synergy, having a little bit more focus around technology commercialization in the country. So MaGIC, if I were to take a step back, MaGIC was, or rather is involved in the capacity building ecosystem, so to speak. So we provide accelerator programs, support for entrepreneurs, entrepreneurship related platforms, as well as access to market. That's essentially what MaGIC is all about. And we also provide regulatory facilitations for entities that require to break into certain heavily regulated industries or markets, for example. Okay. So MaGIC, if you like to think of it, is more of a facilitation for tech startups, right? So we were placed under the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation, MOSTI. Then we have the Technology Park Malaysia. So Technology Park Malaysia is a fairly older agency, which was incepted in 1996. It was incepted as a science and tech park at the same time where we had the multimedia super corridor, the MSC status. So it was all developed and started out just about the same time. However, over time, a lot of the newer agencies sort of took over TPM's role with the development of multiple satellite sort of tech concentrations. We've got KL, we've got Bangsa South, Cyberjaya. So these are all adjacent locations where tech clusters are developed or currently developing, right? So with that sort of TPM, sort of lost out in the race, I would say, right? So I think the new mandate that brought TPM and MaGIC together was to enable bringing out the two things that are going for both the agencies and to reduce redundancies. Because ultimately, government agencies, we spend a lot of resources and funding to hire and employ talents, which is meant to spur and catalyze a tech ecosystem. But again, evidently TPM was kind of left behind. I was prior to this managing MaGIC. So I was the CEO of MaGIC, right. Which was, yes, so under MOSTI, and TPM also happens to be under the same ministry.
Yeah,
and
so the minister is the Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation of Malaysia.
That is right, that is right. So just, so the STIE ministry, yeah? So at the time, the ministry thought that it was fit for a rationalization of agencies, which I think was a needed and a much welcomed move in that sense, because we actually have quite a number of tech and innovation agencies in the ecosystems arising in overlaps. So I think the important thing that happened is rationalization, streamlining of functions. So this is what has happened, MaGIC and TPM. I was brought out of TPM to get into MaGIC and merge the two entities, which is where we are today, MRANTI. Right? So essentially, this is brought together by a new mandate, which is around fast-tracking commercialization for the country, increasing the number of locally developed solutions. So I think in Malaysia, the issue that we struggle with is that we have talent, but the talent is usually disconnected with the industry. So we have an industry that most often than not hires international talent, where we have local talents, pools of them sitting and not being able to connect to the industry. One.
But that's
And
also one thing, Zu, because Malaysia, we've had a very traditionally very poor return on investment on R&D, because there's a disconnect between what R&D efforts in public universities and what industry is doing.
Absolutely. So I was just going to get to that point. So the whole idea of MRANTI, which actually came about from the concept of a technology commercialization accelerator, which was a concept paper that was developed by the Academy of Sciences Malaysia. Yeah. So this was actually presented to the Prime Minister and the National Science Council on the back of the issues that we're currently facing. Absolutely what you just mentioned, the disconnect between academia, what happens in the research and development scene, and the industry, resulting in a very, well, maybe low, I wouldn't say very, but a low commercialization rate compared to our peers. You know, I mean, if you look at countries like Singapore, Korea, Thailand, Japan, or the ASEAN countries for that matter, were fairly low in terms of our overall commercialization rate. In fact, how we define and track commercialization rate is not actually quite standardized in Malaysia. So I think there's a need for a framework to look into this, which the government has actually doubled down on efforts. From the economic planning unit, we've got one unit called the research management unit, which will be tasked to coordinating R&D funding. One. Okay. And then TCA, which is my agency currently, will be tasked as the implementation partner or the implementation agency, looking at all on-ground commercialization activities. So we will be
What are your deliverables then? So if you are tasked to do that, are you given money? Are you given the resources from as a coordinating agency? Are you the one-stop shop? Explain to us what's the execution behind this.
Okay, so I think I'll take a step back and sort of explain how TPM operates.
Okay.
Now, TPM...
As in the new TPM.
That's right, the new TPM. Technology Park Malaysia. Sorry, it's a matter of habit, right? Okay, so Technology Park Malaysia, essentially the parent entity of MRANTI, essentially, right, is a commercial entity. It is... we do not sustain through government grants. We actually generate our own revenues, and it is meant to be a self-sustaining entity.
How do you do that?
So TPM, or Technology Park's business model, is essentially in monetization of the land that has been given to us, or we actually own the rights, or we actually have the rights to develop the land that was actually provided to us under a lease.
You have land, obviously, in Bukit Jalil, which is a technology, a tech park. You also have land in, of all places, in Pahang, I think almost 500 acres of land.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about how you monetize or how it's been done in the past and how you plan to do it moving forward.
Okay, so I think let me touch on TPM first. So TPM is in Bukit Jalil. Bukit Jalil is in Klang Valley, right, smack in the middle of Klang Valley. It's 15 minutes from KL city center. It's about 15 minutes away from the administrative capital, Putrajaya, 15-20 minutes, and strategically located. So our model is to monetize land bank that we have. We currently sit on about 680 acres in Bukit Jalil, of which we have actually divided into 3 key phases. Phase 1 and phase 2 has been developed, largely been developed. Phase 3 has yet to be developed, which means it's an empty land. We have land bank, which we lease out for development. So that's really our commercial model. Our commercial model is through land lease, which is a real estate play, as well as rent of space, because we also do have office space as well as factory space that we actually can let out, right? So, but the intent is moving forward, it will be populated and developed in a strategic manner to meet the concept of a science and tech park.
Okay, because traditionally in the past, unfortunately, TPM has been known more for mismanagement and moving at a glacial pace. How are you, and you've done very, very well as the previous CEO of MaGIC. When you got into TPM, what did you find?
Well, You see, I think it's worth noting that TPM or Technology Park Malaysia is it's an old agency. It was incorporated in 1996. Unfortunately, they didn't move with time, right? From processes to business model to the people, right? So as a result, they were left behind. So the newer agencies like MaGIC and other agencies like Cradle and whatnot, there were a number of agencies in the Malaysian ecosystem took over their role. Now with that, TPM did not get the attention that it needed from the government.
Okay.
Right. So the new mandate is breathing life into the place right now. So I was tasked to basically come in, turn the place around, infuse the new mandate, and merge it with a newer entity with this, which is MaGIC, right?
And how is that going so far?
It's not without its challenges, but it's been fun. It's been fun. So it's been 7 months for me. I came on board in April. So we've been very focused on integration efforts. So this is a merger and acquisition for all intended purposes. So we've been working around the structure issue, change management, consolidation of P&Ls, everything that has to do with the M&A. So it's actually quite huge. So the total team size is close to about 450 people right now, right? Both team combined. So I think one important thing that came about is really infusing the right culture, getting the right people to hold the right portfolio so we can move faster and not at a glacial speed, as you mentioned. That has been our priority. And I think what's interesting is that we have identified many areas of opportunity. Essentially, TPM sits in a gold mine, right?
Okay, so tell us about opportunities. Let's take a positive stance on this.
Yeah.
Where are the opportunities?
Right. So, and in fact, I underestimated the place, if I can be completely candid. But having gone through the entire, looking at the nuts and bolts of the place, you realize that it's one, I think, very simply put, it is actually strategically positioned for any entity to be based out of, right? And namely so a tech entity, because you need proximity to city center, you need proximity to the ecosystem, you need proximity to the financial center, which is there, right? Yes. Now, the other thing is that TPM also has huge land banks to attract tenants who actually want to build facilities ground up, right? So we are actually marketing or actually, packaging TPM as a one-stop technology center equipped with infrastructure. We are bringing in state-of-the-art infrastructure to support all tech and innovation ventures. We are also looking to get in 5G rollout the soonest. In fact, we are already working with Digital National Berhad to actually roll out 5G the soonest, because ultimately it's a science and tech park. And we are building important tech clusters within the science and tech park, which is TPM.
Okay.
So currently,
what tech clusters are you building specifically? Okay. Because that's obviously your go-to-market strategy then.
That is right. So look, whilst we take a real estate play, but as a science and tech park, it is very important to build community, which is what we are trying to do right now. We are leveraging on the existing technology community, which we already have, consisting from the wide range of the technology companies, right? So we have AI companies, we have blockchain companies, we have fintech companies, we even have companies in biotech, right? We have cancer research entities, we have multiple, essentially. So what we've actually done is that we've clustered them to opportunistically focus on certain key areas. So we're looking at enabling technologies such as cloud computing, IoT, data analytics as one cluster. We're looking at drone technology as another one key cluster.
And you're building a new building. I noticed a tender document on your website that you actually call for a tender to build a drone-specific building for drone technology.
That's right. So maybe let me elaborate on that. So we call that the Area 57, not Area 51. It's Area 57. It's 5 acres of designated land space in TPM, where we're essentially dedicating that space to be a center of excellence for drone technology, right? So drone technology is actually picking up in Malaysia and around the region. And we have a number of global companies already based out of Malaysia, or Malaysian companies rather. So we want to help the smaller companies leverage on these bigger guys and grow, All right. So what we've actually done is that we've built, or we are rather building a space. Think of it as airports for drones. It's a 5-acre designated center of excellence, equipped with maintenance, repair, and overhaul, clubhouse. We even have a runway for testing facility, and we will also have office space for drone tech entities to be incubated. So yeah, so the space or the land, the development should be ready in 18 months. We're targeting for it to be completed much earlier. So which is where you saw the RFP document, where we're actually calling out for developers or construction entities to come in and construct the location.
And is Aerodyne, which has recently just been voted, which is a Malaysian company, voted, I think, the #1 drone company in the world, are they going to be playing a role in that?
Yes, so we are working very closely with them in terms of building content, in terms of looking at the value chain of the drone tech ecosystem that needs to be enabled and how they can come in and support. Because I think the good thing, the good thing with Aerodyne is that they have managed to build a staff strength which is largely local talent, right? And they're also building a growing talent pool around artificial intelligence, AI, machine learning, because ultimately drone technology essentially it's in his brains. Yes. You know, if you're talking about the hardware of it, the market is saturated, and I think it's going to be very hard for us to compete with China, which actually, you know, is the factory of the world, even for drones. Right. So I think we need to find how we differentiate ourselves in terms of drone services. And that's where we can play an important role, which is where Aerodyne is actually leading. It's a drone service provider, right? And its niche is in data analytics and AI, right? So what we're also doing is that we're using this cluster to also attract talent pool from the private sector as well as from the public sector talent pool, which is from the academia, right? Because we want to create or reduce the gap or the disconnect between private sector as well as the academia. Allow the talents to work on real life projects, right? Projects that actually matters. Yeah, you know, we don't want them to work in the labs in their universities, not knowing what the real issue out there is. So we're focused on solving real problems for the country. We're focused on solving real issues for the industry. So essentially, that's how we built our clusters. So of course, drone tech is another one. The other cluster that we're actively building is robotics and autonomous vehicles. So robotics and autonomous vehicles, we're building on the momentum that we currently already have. And I think given this platform, I'd like to invite collaboration internally as well as internationally. You know, we're open to having more conversations.
But so how can we compete in Malaysia?
Yeah,
this is an area, everybody from China to the US, the big boys are eyeing this because this is the next area of growth. Yeah. On the component side, the folks in Penang, a lot of our Silicon Valley of Penang, they've found a great niche for themselves in terms of embedded technologies and stuff within the whole autonomous vehicle space. So how are we playing? How does MRANTI play a role in this cluster, and what are you trying to specifically attract? Where can we play? Okay, so the thing is this. As you rightly mentioned, Malaysia has talent, and we've actually built momentum. However, it's sort of tucked in one part of the country, which is in north, which is in Penang, and it has become so international that they actually directly deal with Silicon Valley. Yes. Right. So I think, how do we then, our role as government agency? And again, I think there's a difference. We're a government agency, but we actually take that sweet spot where we actually sandwich between private sector and government. So our role is to bridge, right? So we've had several conversations with the players in Penang as well. So I've been telling them, I said, look, I think a spillover needs to happen, right? You need to come to this part of the countries, the central region, and build base here, because ultimately without the right talent pool, they will not be able to thrive, right? And you want to spread the building of strong talent,
right? And the talent pool sits in the northern region as well as the southern region. So, sorry, the central region as well as the southern region. And us being in the central region, I think can act as an anchor to bring talent together. And when you bring talent together, coupled with solving real issues and real projects to work on, I think there's an opportunity for us to create the momentum that we have in Penang here in the central region.
Okay. Now,
what I'm trying to do is create a spillover.
Okay. And what else are you focusing on?
Okay, so besides autonomous vehicle robotics, we're also looking at biotechnology. I think biotechnology is another cluster which is pretty nascent in this country, but we have some activities, right? So we want to build on. Ultimately, look, I think it is important to have capabilities in the country, in every tech sector possible. You can take it from multiple perspectives. One, maybe to compete internationally, but the other thing is to actually knowledge build. You need knowledge workers that have experience and expertise in certain tech clusters within the country. And better still, if it is across the tech clusters. But if they can compete internationally and create a product that can compete internationally, that's a bonus for sure, right? Okay. Yeah.
Now, to do all of this, you have a 30 million ringgit budget allocation. Am I correct?
Yes.
So to put it in its perspective,
yeah,
it's about $7 million US, which is basically a Series A startup funding in Singapore. How are you going to move the needle with that amount of money?
The short answer is we will not be able to move the needle with just that 30 million. And I think the government is well aware. And again, our model, because we are a commercially driven entity, the grants that are given to us is basically to seed certain initiatives, right? And our role is to bring in private sector to make every dollar work. Right. So with the 30 million that's been given to us by the government, we will be actually seeding certain infrastructure, certain technology clusters and building them. And then obviously we will have to bring in private sector to further invest in those clusters, which conversations have already taken place. In fact, it's ongoing at the moment. So yes, we move the needle in collaboration with private sector.
Okay. And what are your plans, medium term and long term? So now these are short term implementation plans. You're executing, you're building facilities, infrastructure, and so forth. But what's the plan after this?
So I think it's important to have a long-term plan, but we are also taking it one step at a time in terms of tying the loose ends as far as the ecosystem is concerned. TCA's key role is an orchestrator of sorts. Right? We are to convene activities around commercialization. We are to bring together parties, private sector, academia, government, and the startup industry in a central platform, and that we can have more meaningful conversations around commercialization, which can then, branch out into necessary infrastructure, necessary incentives, what are our IP policies, how do we then grow local talent pool? What sort of investments do we need to grow certain verticals or certain companies? So I think it is a start of these conversations. This will be our current focus for this year, getting everyone together and getting the conversation going, but at the same time, leveraging on activities that are already ongoing, such as the community building within TPM. And we do that on a commercial basis where we will actually go out and actually market our land bank. So we will be looking at attracting strategic tech tenants. We're also looking at building an AI park. Yeah, in Bukit Jalil, we have about 300 acres, which is undeveloped right now. And we've actually earmarked that undeveloped piece of land to build and develop a centralized and integrated AI city of sorts. So we will be building AI clusters. We're in the midst of planning. Talking to partners who can build, content in AI. Essentially, it would be a real estate play, but a tech strategic tech play more than anything else. So that's essentially what we're actually trying to do, and a lot of it will happen this year. So between the short to medium term is to be a convener, get the community going, and essentially we have targets that we are looking to meet, which is number of companies that we are looking to commercialize, commercialization rate, ultimately improving the global ranking as well, Malaysia in the global ranking.
Now, I'm going to zoom in on you now.
Yeah.
Now, you're a leader growing places. You did really well at MaGIC. What are the key lessons that you've learned so far, especially in your efforts to turn around TPM, that you would like to share with other business leaders?
I think there's a lot, really. There's really a lot. But if I can just narrow down on a couple, I would probably start with, it's ultimately important to have the right people. All right. And I think my biggest challenge and probably the most rewarding part of this 7 months has been to bring together the brightest minds, the best people that have worked with me and from the industry to work on this new vision, to work on this new mandate. And I think a lot of it is really about getting them on board. And there's a lot of selling. So, I think as CEOs, we sell.
Yes.
Our biggest job is to sell. You sell the vision, you sell the mandate, you sell your business. You have to market it very well, right? So people need to believe in your vision in order to get on board. So I think that has been my challenge, as well as, it's been very, very rewarding because I've been able to put together a bunch of really passionate people to work on this new mandate. And along that comes, the nitty-gritty issues, the nuts and bolts that you sort of need to tighten, the loose ends that you need to take care of. And I think the unique challenge that I have managing a government agency is basically juggling multiple stakeholders. I have the government that I have to juggle, my government stakeholders, my board, my commercial stakeholders, and my team, right? Which is growing. We're about 450 people. And ultimately, all 4 key stakeholders are about people. And I think empathy is a very, very important quality to have for any leader and any CEO, especially going through something that, we went through in the last 7 months.
Dzu, it's been a fascinating conversation. Thank you very much for taking your time to be on the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Brian.
Now, I'm Brian Fernandez, and I've been speaking to Dzuleira Abu Bakar, Group CEO of the Malaysian Research Accelerator for Technology and Innovation, MRANTI, on Biztech's CEO Conversation Show. This video and podcast will be on various social media platforms as well as our website, www.biztech.asia. Please like and subscribe to our various platforms. Thank you very much for tuning in.